Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Women's Splain. Today is a very special episode. We are missing Sola. We love her and she's in our hearts, but she is not available to record today. But I took the liberty to interview Felix Levine, who we've absolutely mentioned on many of our socials. But we are actually his client, and he effectively is the reason that we're here. He's awesome. But yeah, and so today I think we're just going to talk about him and his career, and I'll pass off to him to have a little intro, and we'll go from there. Thanks for being here.
Of course. Well, thank you for having me in my studio.
Literally, yes.
No, you guys, well, you know how much I love you guys as people. Yes, you are my clients, but I can't put favorites, of course, but you're definitely up there. And it's exciting. I think that what you and Sola are building, like we're working on getting it to more people because I think that you guys are fucking smart. So it's exciting to fill in and substitute for Sola, who we are sending our love to.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Felix. And I know, look, I would love to just start and just have you talk about sort of your podcast and where's this going. You started at a super young age. You are really young, and would love to just hear about what sort of brought you to that, especially when you were so young, and what inspired you.
So funny enough, I am rebranding my podcast currently. So probably when this comes out, I might have already launched my first episode, so I'll spoil it now in case I don't. I'll be rebranding. It'll be called Unlike Me, where I sit down with fascinating people I have nothing in common with. I started my podcast when I was 19 out of my freshman year college dorm room. I went to UC Santa Barbara my freshman year. I was fucking miserable. I hated it there. And because I was a New Yorker, I was just like, get me away from these way too nice people. And I started listening to I was very antisocial. I think that was really one of the moments where I was like most depressed, to be honest, or like I'd always been social. I'd always been like talking to people, and I just wasn't like that at all. Probably didn't help that I was also like dating somebody that was in New York. So like every part of me was just in New York. And so I started listening to podcasts, and I was like, yeah, I really think I can do this. Like there's so many people that I want to talk to and interview and learn from and connect with and yada, yada. And so, I just kind of took it upon myself towards the end of my freshman year after I knew while I was finishing up the applications, to transfer. And then I just started and really haven't looked back since. And then when I transferred over to Boston University, BU, my mom basically moved to France and didn't use our car, so I stole the car legally and
use your mom's car. I'm like, it's not like, okay.
Well, I just told her one day, I'm like, I think this is mine. And then I would just drive back and forth from school a couple times a week, or maybe once a week or a couple times a week sometimes, from Boston, which is not a short trip, and record. And I just felt like it would be so cool for me to Tuesday at 11 a.m. I'm in business law class, and then at 5 o'clock I'm sitting down with like some really cool, fascinating individual. And I think that it's brought me, I tell people this all the time, it brought me literally everything in my life today, both personally and professionally. So it's for me, it's been cool because it's been like an amazing experience, but really it allowed me to build something or put the foundations for something that I think will be much, much bigger than just a podcast, or that I know will be. So it's been a fun little 5 years.
Yeah. And I mean, your podcast has grown so much. You've had incredible guests.
Yeah.
You were so young starting it. And I think that's what's so impressive personally for me. I think when I was 19, I was so insecure. I would never have done something that was kind of off the beaten path, and so risky. What advice would you give kind of an 18, 19-year-old in your position who maybe feels like, I mean, that's such a hard period of your time. Yeah. A lot of people struggle early in college to do something this risky where you can really, I feel like, struggle or feel insecure.
I think for me, I think I have this aspect of me that I'm like quite delusional sometimes. I'm just like, I was like, oh yeah, well, of course I can sit down with the mayor of New or the future mayor or this ex hitman in the mafia, and of course I can hold my own and I'll be just fine. So I think it was that. I think it was genuine curiosity. And I always tell people, but like one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was from one of my former guests, Christina Hutchinson, who's an amazing comedian. And I'd asked her, she has a podcast called Guys We Fucked, that's huge and whatever. And she had always, I asked her in the beginning when I first had her on, she was just how to start a podcast and grow. And she was just like, just follow your curiosity and you'll be literally just fine. And I think that's like really, it sounds corny, but like it's true where I just would only sit and talk to people I was interested by. I'd only do things that I was curious by. And then I'm someone that like, I feed off momentum. So when I see something that interests me, when I talk to someone that interests me, when I feel something interesting, like I just go 1,000 miles an hour, which sometimes I'm learning to like stop and like be strategic and smarter about like how I'm doing things. But that's all in like growing up and learning. But if someone's 18 or 19, I think the best thing, you realize this, and we were kind of having a conversation off air that basically summed this up. It's like, and you know this, it's like, it's really all about who you know and the relationship. So for me, it's cool now where I have unbelievable relationships with a lot of people in a lot of different places. And because I have so many reps of speaking to people, asking questions, listening, like I feel like I can talk to anybody at any moment. So that also gave me a confidence too that I think I wouldn't have had without the podcast. And it just gives you, I think, why, and again, everybody has a podcast these days, and I give you this lecture when we do our little consultings, but like it's really also about much more than that. If you can create it, it's about like giving yourself visibility, distribution, a real brand, like an excuse to get in front of people. Like there's a lot of different things. So I think once I started approaching it like that, I started being like, wow, what I've created is really my most valuable asset currently today. Hopefully it'll be like a super valued company in 5 years. But as of today, it's my podcast. But yeah, I think that's really like what I try to center myself on when I'm working.
Yeah. And I mean, you come off so mature, I think, and like obviously so well spoken. And I think it's incredible. And obviously, I'm sure you've developed so much. Like, tell me more about the rebrand. I feel like obviously when you started, you were so young. You've obviously grown, I'm sure, just as a person over the past 5+ years. But I think when it started, it sounds like you were just trying to learn and maybe figure out your place in the world. And now you're kind of forming it into something else. What does that mean for you?
For me, it's kind of sounds really cheesy, but like kind of fall in love with it again in the sense of like, and also what's funny is I have you being one of my clients, but I've been seeing things that have like, I'll preach, right? And then I'm like, wait, where's my episode every week? Where's everything that I've been saying? And then I see like my clients doing it and having success and like understanding their shows and understanding like what's working and what's not, and like really doing much more deep dives than I ever have helping and consulting people. And I'm like, wait, I already knew a lot about this industry and now I'm just learning more every day and being like, it's an ever changing one. Like 5 years ago, there was no video. Now it's like you need video. So for me, the rebrand is like a way to hold myself to that same standard that I do with my clients. And also really kind of, and my girlfriend and her mom have helped me with this because her mom's an amazing producer, is like understand the real like through line to my show. And I think you and I have talked about this as well. It's like, am I just having a podcast to have a podcast for the sake of having a podcast? Like, or do I have an angle at which I approach it and every conversation is through that same lens? And how do I create a more engaged and more active group of listeners? And how do I then translate like convert those listeners into, potential customers of things that I'm working on outside of podcasting, or new clients or whatever it might be. So I think for me, it was like a really good way to establish more, even my own brand. Like I felt like a lot of my show was always guest oriented and it'll still remain guest oriented, but I want to have a little bit more of a personality than I feel like I did before. And I'm lucky enough to like be in a position where I can speak to really cool people. So I want to be able to take advantage of that more. And also like, I've created this and spent way too much money on this place. So I want to like really, you know, reap the benefits, not just for others, but also like for myself, because I spent so long trying to put it together. And so I feel like it's time that it comes together.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Because your show is centered around guests, do you feel like you maybe don't share as much of yourself as you would if it was with a partner or something?
100%. I think also like I always want to show respect to my guests in the sense like they took time out of their day to come on. Absolutely. They like, you know, a lot of them are super busy. You know, I always kind of think about it in a weird way. I was thinking about it the other day where one of my guests, former guests, Encore Jane, who I was just at his wedding in Egypt. That was like the wedding of the century. And I was thinking he was a guest on my show, and I had him on here for an hour, and it took him probably a half hour to get here and to go back. And I'm like, that's 2 hours of time out of his day and an hour of FaceTime that I got with him. And I'm thinking, there's probably even people that he works with that probably could never get an hour of FaceTime just one-on-one with, you know, the CEO of that company. It's now such a massive company. So it's like, for me, it's also cool to like, you really want to respect that time, and it's very, very valuable, especially for people like of him at that level, and anyone else too. So it's, I want to make it around about my guests always, or like show them the respect, but I think there's ways to integrate more of a personality and like, not make it about me, but give my listener, create more of a loyalty between my audience and myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a tough balance, but I think that's amazing. I'm excited to see where it goes.
Thank you.
Non pun intended, but I also would love to learn more about, I feel like I'll call it like a podcast incubator. I mean, of course, I'm extremely grateful for it. Tell me what inspired that, you sort of how it's evolved and where you see it going too.
So what's funny is I built this place out about a year and a half plus ago. So it was one of my sponsors, shout out to US Wellness Meats, who has been with me literally 4+ years now. And I love this company. I'm very loyal to them. They're great because I think that they especially the main people that I've dealt with there, like they've seen me from literally the beginning, like episode 2, I think was the first time that they sponsored an episode. And I think they saw something, I hope. And I worked with, they really helped me kind of build this place out. And so when I had the opportunity to build it out, it was really only for me. And I was like, okay, you know, maybe I'll rent it out privately to like friends here and there. And then come like 6 months ago, I was kind of at the end of it where I was just like, fuck this. Like if someone wants to buy this place off of me, or like, we can figure it out, because it's an amazing podcast studio that's fully set up with the best equipment, best everything. So yeah. I'm like, how am I not like bettering? Like, how am I not what's the word I'm looking for? Like utilizing this opportunity way more, creating more revenue for myself, creating more opportunities for other people. And so I was like, wait, like, let me like promote this a little bit on Instagram. And I had actually, what's funny enough is I had many conversations with another podcast studio owner who I have a great relationship with, who was like maybe thinking about coming in and buying it out for me, basically, like my original idea. And then I just put up a couple Instagram stories, and then people were they were swiping up. And then I was just doing like, for people who weren't in New York City, I was doing like one-off consulting calls. And then I had some bigger clients where I was just consulting for them in a bigger way. And then my New York City locals, my thing was also like, I've recorded at every studio in New York, LA, I've recorded internationally. I know what you need in a studio. I know what it is. And like, for me, I'm biased, but like, I think my studio is really at that premier level where like you have everything you need. It's comfortable. It's cozy. Like it's very dynamic depending on how many people you have, whatever. And I also know the rates of other studios. So I was basically like, fuck it. Like, let me make it half the price of anywhere else in the city. And like, no one can compare to that. And I'm going to kind of hold your hand through a lot of things, which I think a lot of people need. Totally. Especially because there's so much information out there that like, you don't know what to do. And I know for me, I spent way more money in the beginning than I should have because I didn't know. And so you end up saving people time, money, and taking away like the scary aspect of starting a podcast. And so I really now have created, like, out of thin air. It was like the most awesome thing in a way, where like I created this business out of thin air, and I love everything entrepreneurially related. So this was like very much in my wheelhouse. And so, as I was saying, out of thin air, it was like this business of either consulting and helping people that weren't based in New York. And so I have a lot of clients all around that I've worked with all around the country, really. And so depending on what they need, whether it's booking guests, monetizing, coming up with the concept of their show, scaling it, YouTube strategy, like anything that I have now like 5+ years of experience. So I do that. And then for my New York City people, if they want to come in and rent cheaper studio time, like, God bless, I'm here.
I mean, I know. Certainly Sol and I would not be here without you. I feel like it's such an incredible like service to the world. Super grateful for it, and shout out to you. So I appreciate it. And kind of going back onto this, I mean, obviously you have tons of other like endeavors, I'll call it. Do you see yourself having a podcast forever? I feel like you always say it's a launching pad to a million things. It is. Like, what is your passion? What makes you excited?
It's a great question. I have always said I'll always do the podcast. Now, I think where I've struggled in the last like year is being consistent. And again, going off things that not that I've been inconsistent. Like it's just like, if some months it'll be 2 episodes, 3 episodes, 4 episodes. Like, I just want to make it more of a show so I can like, I spent so much time putting it together, so it's almost like Felix, like it's literally on a silver platter. Like, do it the right way, the way that you know how to do too. But I am busy with other endeavors, as you said. I would want to always do it and grow it because it had like it's almost like imagine thinking it brought me everything in my life and what I'm just gonna abandon it and like I'm like too good to like grind like that always didn't sit right with me. So that's why I think part of the rebrand was like really recalibrating there. And then with everything else, I started a company last year that I recently ended, which was an excellent decision. But all 4 of my advisors were guests on my show. I am starting something with my girlfriend that we've already talked about on a podcast, so it's okay. We can say it. We can't say what, but starting something with Serena. And obviously, she was a guest on my show, so that's like the best gift ever from a show. But also, if you're talking about like actual endeavors, like we're starting something together as well. So that's, a byproduct in a way, I guess, of the show. And then there's one other smaller endeavor with another guest on my show that we're working on something. So it's funny to see that like both like romantically, my girlfriend, that was pure luck. But then also like business wise, all these opportunities come and these relationships come. So for me, it's like, how could you stop now? Because even if it's not working on something together now, you don't know where things go. And in 3 years, in 10 years, we could start a fund together. And, God knows, right? Like, you just don't know. So it's like, how could I stop doing the podcast? That would be so silly of me.
You're like, it would be the dumbest thing.
It would actually be the dumbest thing
I've ever done.
It would also be dumb because like I work so hard to be in a position where I can sit down with some of the amazing people that I'm lucky enough to sit down with. And so it's like not doing it is just would be a mistake.
Yeah. No, you're like, it's kind of like ignoring every sign. Correct. Kind of a thing. Do you have a dream guest you haven't had?
Barack Obama.
Really?
Yeah, I'd say Barack. I'd love to like sit down. Low-key, I'd love to sit down with Drake.
Especially right now.
Crazy take, yeah.
Especially right now.
No, this whole beef is crazy.
Oh my God, so wild.
But I would love to sit down. Oh, actually, no. My dream guest right now is Andrew Schultz, and he's been one of my dream guests. He's been one of my dream guests for 4 years now. We had DM'd when I was back in college, and it's funny. We have a couple similarities. He went to UC Santa Barbara. I went to UC Santa Barbara. He's a New York guy. I'm a New York guy. We have a lot of mutuals. And shout out, we have the same hairdresser. Shout out to Alex, the best in the world. And it's funny. I've DM'd him a bunch. I've pestered him. That would be the better word. And like a couple years ago, he's like, "Don't worry, we'll do it one day. I promise. I promise." And like even over the course of the years, I'd hit him up like every 6 or 12 months in a random DM, and he'd be like, "We'll do it." And he's a man of his word, so I know he will. So Andrew, I just was at your MSG show the other day. He will be sitting across from me in the studio one day, but I know he's busy. He just had a kid, so but I know that's gonna happen one day. But he's really up there because I think that he changed the game in terms of like short form content, doing things on your own from a media and podcast and content standpoint. I think he's a fucking genius, to be honest. Like, I think that he's a comedic genius, but I think also like business wise and like tapping into how people think and feel, he's best in the world right now. So yeah, Andrew Schultz, you'll be on my show soon.
Wow, that's awesome. And I guess you touched on this a little bit, but kind of to wrap up.
Damn, quick.
Is there?
Yeah, I could go for hours, but yeah, continue.
Because now you're sort of on the other side, and you have clients that you're teaching and mentoring. What do you think you've learned from teaching that you, or maybe perspective you got from being on the other side that you applied to your own podcast?
The power of consistency. I think also the power of testing your content. That's a big one that I'm still trying to figure out how to really do it with my stuff. Because every show is different. Every niche of content is different. I think even more so is like the thing that I love the most about working with people, and I'm going to use you guys as an example for a second, is like, you guys are so fucking smart. And so like, you know, people can learn a lot from you. And I think that you guys, you are where you are today, right? Which is fucking amazing. And then it's like, okay, well, in 5 years, what are you going to want to do? Or where are you going to what's going to be going on with you? And so how can you use the podcast as either A, launching pad to get you to that place in 5 years, or B, figure out how the podcast and your own business kind of works together. And so I think that's the fun part and every client's different. Like, I have clients, I did a consulting call yesterday with 2 women in North Carolina who have like this hair and makeup brand company that they're like the it girls for hair and makeup in North Carolina. And they had a podcast. And so we're thinking they're trying to like monetize. And so we're brainstorming like, what are the different options? So it almost feels like it's podcasting consulting, but like the business side excites me the most, I think. So yeah, I would say that it's like, it's cool to like kind of enter into different people's lives in a way that like, I guess is podcasting, but you learn so much more about them, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's like you see what people create.
I'm curious, what's something that you maybe learned about either podcasting or yourself, or something you guys like through the last 6 months of starting your show and doing this whole thing?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like I never thought I would do anything like this. I feel like I don't really have a naturally like entrepreneurial, anti-authoritarian attitude at all, and have certainly been kind of a rule follower in my life. And so I feel like it's been crazy to see how I've been able to put myself out there like this, and sort of take a risk in this way, and how much I've really liked it.
Do you, what aspect of it is it like scary to just like be in front of a mic and camera, which I get, by the way.
Totally. I think it's really scary to be in front of a mic and camera in front of people you know, and to be like promoting yourself. It feels really strange, especially like I'm not someone who's used social media in my life. And so like literally my friends call me a boomer. And so I feel like it's really new to me.
Yeah.
And it's also, I feel like generally from like my confidence perspective, I'm like, do I have something to say? And is that worthy for other people to listen to? And I feel like I've also just realized it's okay. I mean, like, I do have something to say. I don't know if it's like great or not, but it's something. And it's been really fun to kind of just see where it goes. So it's been really different.
I mean, I think you guys like, you also like, you guys have done all the highest levels of like academia, of like finance in New York City, which is like the highest some of the highest in the world, right?
For sure.
But I think what's so interesting specifically about you guys is well, A, obviously being in a male dominated field. And then also it's just like to do something that's out of your comfort zone, because like people like, I'm sure you've always been like top of the class when you were at school
all
growing
things.
up, like the whole things, right? And so like, but like when you step into a new world, it can take a little bit of time to get there, but I'm sure you, and that's why even some of the guests that you've already had and the conversations you've had and the guests you're going to continue to have, there's a lot that there's so many that you can tap into. It's like, I'm excited to see them like get introduced to you in this format too, where you ask the questions that you do and have the conversations that you do, because I think you guys like, and again, I tell you, and I preach this, and I'm so annoying about it in our sessions, but like, I think the best way to measure your podcast is absolutely not by views and all that. Like, that stuff is great for growth, like growth on paper,
totally.
but like, you guys could bring someone on your show and go start a business together, a week later, because you know how. You know what I mean? So like, I think, and then that business does well, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, holy shit, I wouldn't have started this if I hadn't, had this conversation with someone on the podcast. And that's like, I'm not even romanticizing that. Like, that could actually happen that way. Like,
it happened with you.
And I'm telling it like it happened with me. So like, and I mean, I'm not rich yet, but I will be. But
exactly, you're pre-rich. I think it's a good attitude. You're pre-rich.
Wait, that's so good.
That's literally like, yeah, it's okay. It's like I'm a seed stage company,
I'm pre-rich.
Exactly.
That's crazy. I'm gonna use that.
Yeah, it's good manifestation.
But so I think, all that to say is I'm excited to see where you guys go, because I think there's just so much that you could do with this, and outside of this, obviously.
Well, thank you. Well, I'm excited too, and thank you for being on this journey with us. And thanks for coming on, Felix. You're awesome.
What a pleasure.
Thanks so much for being on Womansplain. Please send us an email, womansplain1pod@gmail.com. If you have any guests or questions, or any questions for Felix too, because he's here. Or you want a podcast? We'll start a podcast. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.